Dobrý večer, vítám vás v Centru architektury městského plánování. Vlastně po Vánocích v jedné z prvních akcí, už jsme tady měli nějakou komentovanou prohlídku a tak dále, ale tohle je jedna z těch prvních akcí toho programu lednového. Už pomalu najdete na stránkách našich praha.camp. Únorový program, už se tam objevují nějaké akce, ještě jsou tam poslední akce doprovodné k výstavě, která právě probíhá, Město a řeka, takže se můžete určitě podívat, jestli tam ještě něco nestihnete, ještě se seznámit trošku s projekty, které se na řece v Praze objevují a objeví, nebo už tam třeba jsou realizované a můžete se dozvědět něco nového o nich. A taky se tam dozvíte o připravovaných projektech, bude to krátkodobá intervence s filmovou projekcí a potom se objeví výstava Planeta Praha. Takže určitě je na co se těšit, takže sledujte ten program tak, jak jste zvyklí. Dneska jsme se tady setkali na přednášce, která vlastně nespadá do žádného z našich cyklů, ale dalo by se jí zařadit do Prahy zítra, protože Praha samozřejmě se bude muset také určitým způsobem adaptovat a snaží se adaptovat, tak jako se o to snaží všechna hlavní města, protože v hlavních městech samozřejmě ty problémy s adaptací na změny klimatu jsou největší, nejvýraznější, ale zároveň tak je tam nejvíce zdrojů a nástrojů na to, jak se posunout v tomhletom boji k lepšímu nebo k nějakým výsledkům. Města se mezi sebou inspirují, takže je určitě záhodno podívat se na příklady ze zahraničí a tak dále. A právě ty příklady, ale nejenom ty příklady, přináší kniha Flexible City, jejíhož spoluautora tady dnes máme, aby nám o tom konceptu, o té knize jako takové něco pověděl. A ta kniha je vlastně i nástrojem na to, jak své město připravit, na to, aby bylo trošku odolnější, aby se dokázalo rychleji adaptovat na další změny, které třeba přijdou, protože samozřejmě se nemusíme bavit jenom o klimatu, těch věcí, které je potřeba ve městech přizpůsobovat, je spoustu. Takže vítám vás tady na přednášce Flexible City. Tu bude mít i Tom Bergevoet, který je spoluautorem té knihy a já ho tady přivítám. So Tom, welcome to camp. Thank you for your time and thank you for the decision to make this lecture for us. And I will give you floor and I will ask you for a presentation.
Thank you very much for this introduction. I must say I didn't understand a word of it. So, and thank you for having me here in English. And today I'm going to talk with you about our newest book, The Flexible City. And I think that's what you already heard in the Czech language. And to start with the beginning, we are not doing well, and I think you're all aware of it. Or we are suffering from climate change. Our Earth is suffering from droughts, from floods. We are exhausting our planet by digging all kind of materials out of the ground, and we are causing with our behavior the extinction of a lot of species. And there's many people, especially many young people, that are really upset about that, and they go on the streets in all capitals of Europe, telling that politicians should change their way of doing, and telling us all we should change our way of living. And I think they're right. We should change our way of living, and this is a bit of a negative start of this talk, but in the end, it's going to be a positive evening, I promise you, because the book we wrote is about solutions, is about answers to the challenges we are facing. And the good thing also is that we, as a community of urban planners, of designers, of city makers, we can change the world. It's part of our profession. And we are able, with our tools, with our designing methods, to make the changes that improve our world, that make our world safer again, that make the world more circular and more climate adaptive. Today I'm going to talk with you first about the works of our office, Temp Architecture Urbanism, an office for architecture and urbanism based in Amsterdam. We are doing on a daily basis, we work on designs for all kind of plans in Amsterdam and in the Netherlands. And while talking about our works, I'm introducing the book. And in the second half of my presentation, I'm going to talk with you about the book. And there's a lot of information in that book, and yeah, it's all coming to a point where I hope we will have a good discussion, a good conversation together about the topics of the book and about what especially interests you and what are the possibilities to make Prague more circular and climate adaptive. What you see here is the design we made for a new entry zone of the biggest hospital in the Netherlands, the AMC in Amsterdam. And when I'm saying we can make a change, this is what I mean. This used to be for a long period, for I think 40 years, this used to be the situation at this hospital building. The entry was totally paved with asphalt and totally full of cars. And as a pedestrian, you got easily lost between all those cars, and you had to find the entrance with a lot of stress. And another bad dimension of this entry zone was that at heavy rainfalls, the rain couldn't go away. So there were big floods happening here. And because it was the entry also for the ambulances of the hospital, it was quite a risky situation. So out of a competition, we got the commission to improve this situation, and we somehow managed to reorganize this whole entry area. We made it much greener, and Park is much better able to accept all the rainwater coming at certain periods. So the flooding risk is gone at the moment, and also the neighborhood is much more healthier. So cars are still there, but they're less visible. They play a less visible role. The hospital is still well acceptable by cars. But the pedestrian is much more important. So you can go from many ways. You can come to the hospital entry as a pedestrian, and all the nature that came in brings in a lot of health, a much healthier situation actually. Another project that we're doing in Amsterdam is this. What you see is a building that behaves like a park. Of course, also in Amsterdam, there's a big need of more housing. And at the meantime, we should also restore and improve our ecosystems within the city. And this building is not only housing, I think, 250 dwellings, but it's also recognizable for all kind of insects, for birds, for bats, as nature. So it's being designed like this. It's part of the ecostructure of Amsterdam. So it's a stepping stone for all kind of animals within their network, and in that way, I think it's a good project that helps Amsterdam to become more to have a richer biodiversity. And as a designer, we went really into the details of how to get this nature into a building. So we were looking for green roofs and green facades, and also the orientation of the facades played a role, and also the infrastructure, the galleries, the stairs. We were really rethinking all those elements and think, how can we introduce green? How can we introduce nature in our way of living, in our buildings? And in the end, this will be the result. This is about climate adaptation, I would say. But this project that I'm showing now is about circularity. So climate adaptation is about trying to improve, trying to restore all the failures that were caused by climate change. But we also have to prevent climate change to increase, and that's possible by lowering our carbon dioxide emission. And while making concrete, we produce a lot of carbon dioxide, and that causes climate change. So it's important as architects that we think about reducing our footprint, and to reduce our climate dioxide emission. This building from the 70s or from the 60s is made out of concrete, and originally there were 6 of them, and 3 are already demolished. And at a certain moment, our client, which is a housing corporation, thought, well, maybe we should keep those concrete buildings, because then we don't produce that much carbon dioxide while rebuilding it. So by keeping all the concrete of the casco and by keeping the elements of the facade, which are also from concrete, we have 1,400 tons of carbon dioxide reduction when we compare it to the demolition of these buildings and the new construction. And what we do actually is, you see here the original detail. The concrete is, I can also show you like this. The concrete brings a lot of cold inside the interior, and also a lot of heat. So while insulating the whole building and bringing back the concrete elements in the facade, we insulate the building, and reusing actually the material, the concrete that was originally part of this building. And the interesting thing of this method is that we can also look at the original architecture, and we can, of course, follow that principles, but where necessary, we can also improve that. For example, here the ground floor was pretty closed. There were a lot of storages, and we made that more transparent. So we let us be inspired by the original architecture, but also we try to improve it. And this is a project where, by not demolishing the original structure, but by restoring it, we save a lot of carbon dioxide emissions. This is the image that is part of the invitation you all saw on the website, so I thought I should also show it. It's a house in Sweden. It's a self-sufficient house. That means that the electricity that's used is produced by the house itself, by solar panels. The water is coming from the ground. The water goes, while used, it was cleaned and it goes into the ground back again. So also this self-sufficiency is a way of achieving more sustainability, of achieving more circularity. So the energy should not, doesn't have to be made far away in a factory with coals or whatever. No, it's produced on the site and it's used on the site. You don't need pipes on the ground, and that's also a way to make our world more circular. And when it gets dark, the light goes on and the energy is produced by the house itself. So these were some projects by our office, and we are next to architects, also writers and researchers, and also we teach a lot. So we always have the tendency to what we learn and what we see to think over, to reorganize, and to write about that. And that's why we thought the most important themes that are in our that we encounter in our works, circularity and climate adaptation, those are interesting themes to write about, and that became this book. And it's actually the third one in a row. We already start publishing in 2013, and that was a book about the financial crisis at those days, and the last one now is about circularity and climate adaptation. All books are about Europe, and the interesting thing about that is that of course there are differences between the countries in Europe, but because we all are part of the European Union, We also have a lot in common. So it makes sense to look at each other and to learn from each other. The little differences between the countries are small enough to also see at the bigger picture, to see similarities. So the focus of the book is on Europe, and the principle is that successes from one country can be easily taken over to other countries. This time we didn't do that alone as authors, but we did it with a team of reporters, and they all have a different background. They're all from different countries. Some of them are from Germany, there's one from Greece, and also, of course, there was one from Prague, Anna-Marie Maskova. She's currently living in the Netherlands, and she helped us with the parts that were telling about Prague. And as you see, with this team of reporters, we cover quite a big part of Europe. And our ambition was to have the projects in the book as widely spread as possible. And well, it's up to you to see if that, how far we came to that. And yeah, somehow on specific topics, you see that some countries are ahead of other countries. Yeah? So you always bump into the same countries when it's about heat stress. They have a lot of experience in Greece. When it's about rainwater, it's Denmark and the Netherlands. And when it's about bio-based materials, I think it's Germany and also Scandinavia that has really well developed already. Well, the book is pretty, yeah, I mean, it's 200 pages, so it's impossible for me to tell you about the book, to do that very completely. So what I'm doing now is briefly walk through the book with you, and then we have to see together where your interest is in, and then we can discuss a bit focused on some pages later. So in the prologue, we once more define or describe the challenges we are facing in our cities. For example, there's pollution, there's all kind of flooding risks, there's this global warming thing that especially appears in our cities, and our biodiversity is decreasing. And of course, you can. These maps are part of the book, but in the prologue we focused on specific areas, specific regions, and cities to tell about those challenges in detail. If you want to tell something about soil pollution, it's good to look at Katowice, about Silesian area, because there's a lot of industry in the recent past, and they really are coping with a lot of soil pollution and also water pollution. When it's about rainwater flooding, Amsterdam has quite some experience, already quite long. The city is struggling with its water balance, and we were very inspired by the story in Prague about biodiversity and your ambition to restore your green belt or your ecostructure that was kind of broken by the development in the 20th century. So that's the prologue, and in the chapter 1 we tell about the inflexible city. So why do we need flexible instruments? First, you have to explain what is inflexible in our current cities. And once more, maps that show the circular principle. So when we make less waste, carbon dioxide is also a waste product. The more waste we make, the less circular our cities become. So we should really reduce our waste, and in that way we can become more circular, and we also work on avoiding the reasons for climate change. On the other hand, climate adaptation is about restoring or dealing with the consequences of climate change. And you see on the map on the right side that the different parts in Europe have different challenges. Of course, on the seaside, there's risk of flooding. In the south of Europe, there's risk of heat stress. And in the mountains, they're coping with the climate that it's very quickly changing. Snow it's disappearing, etc. The core of the book is that if we want to make our cities climate adaptive and circular, we need to change the existing parts of the city. Our cities are huge, and we need to change the existing buildings, and that's a pretty hard and tough assignment. All the things that are already there are pretty inflexible. They're there and they're static, and they have to be changed in more or less to become more climate adaptive or circular. So the inflexibility is, the existing urban tissue is by nature is inflexible. So that's why we think we need a more flexible system. So then we come to chapter 2, which is about a flexible city. And there is a classical way of developing the city, which is, you can call it blueprint planning. It's a linear way of planning. And that the thought is that you make a plan in the beginning, and once this plan is good enough, you execute it, and it's a static end product. It's meant for eternity, you could say. But what we learn now is that we have to change, we have to improve the existing. And that means that we have to accept that this end result was not so perfect and not so unchangeable as we thought initially that it would be. So we have to come up with another way of planning that we call improvisory planning, or maybe you should call it circular planning. And that's planning in steps. And let me show you this. This is Amsterdam, the last 150 years. This is the, you can say the classical city center, while turning it into a modern city. We expanded the city enormously, and that's a blueprint planning assignment. And nowadays, we're not going to expand it once more. We have to accept that the assignment, the making Amsterdam future-proof, is changing the existing urban tissue. And that's another assignment than this blueprint planning. So once again, from nothing, from tabula rasa to a city, to a modernist city, that's a blueprint planning assignment. And this is still how our instruments for city making are what they can do, what they are equipped for. But this is the assignment that we have now. We have to change and improve and densify and the existing city into something which fits better to the current challenges. And that's an assignment that needs more flexibility than our system currently can offer us. Once more, this is a village in Denmark. This is Utrecht in the Netherlands, Brussels. All these cities and towns and villages made the same development the last 150 years. From small to very big. This is still our planning system. But we need a planning system that is able to change the existing now into something better, into something fitting better to the current and the future challenges. When you zoom in on this scheme of flexible planning, you see that it's, the nature of it, the base of it, the essence of it is working in steps. It's not from A to B and then period, that's it. No, we have to accept that the design is never finished. We have to accept that there will always be new challenges, and we have to change the existing to our new needs. And the good thing about that is that it offers much more chances for participation than we are used to in blueprint planning. The investments will be possible to make in phases. Not all investments, I think. There will still be big investments, but you can also think in your investment scheme in phases. It brings us to new ways of investing, new concepts for investing. And in the end, and this is pretty tough one too, if this city should develop further, and if a city is never finished, then we also need a legal framework that is somehow adjustable, because it should allow us to change things at a certain moment. And at the same time, it should still protect existing values and existing rights. So that's also legally pretty much of a challenge. I will show you some examples of this way of planning. This is a part of Amsterdam that is currently it's pretty well Siam based. So it's a modernist part of the city with a huge field next to it for parking. This used to be an entry for a big highway going from Amsterdam to Rotterdam, but that highway was never realized. And since the 60s, it's a huge parking lot. And for a while, people thought, well, it's not being used that well, but we might need it in future. But the city of Amsterdam is being confronted with lesser and lesser car use. So the chance that this parking lot will be used in future is getting smaller and smaller. So you can say we should take our chance and improve that part of the city while and we have the possibility to build new homes there. And if you do that by not building the whole area at once, full with houses, but if you do that in phases, you can start with one single row of housing blocks, and you stay the rest. You can keep it like it is now. It will be an acceptable scheme, we think, for people that think we might still need those cars, those parking places in future. And then, I mean, having that first phase realized, you can see what happens if people like it, how these car parking is behaving. And you can make a next step from there. You can say, okay, this is actually the right balance between new buildings and our parking space in the city. So that means that we can say it stays unchanged. But you can also say, no, this is a good development, but we don't want more buildings here. So we're going to extend, there's a park here, we're going to extend the park here. So here we're going to extend the housing area, and on the other side of the strip, we're going to extend the park. Which is another possibility. And the third possibility is to say, well, we need that much housing, let's go all the way and let's build also the other buildings in this strip. So in this way, you can change the city in steps in a way which brings which makes the change more acceptable. You can slowly follow the change, the reduced need for parking spaces. Another example is this project in the Netherlands. The rising water is really a big issue, and nobody exactly knows when the sea rise, how much it will raise. So we need somehow building projects that can encounter this insecurity. So this is such a try. We developed it together with the municipality of Amsterdam, and there's a base. There's a base of concrete of 2 stories. And on top of that, there's all kind of blocks for housing with bio-based materials, so wood. And this base of concrete can also have housing, or it can have shops or parking or whatever. And the good thing is that having your city organized like this, you can encounter extreme floods because the concrete base is able to cope with this water rise. Of course, the wood not, but the concrete can. So in worst case scenario, you give up the basement of this project, and your city goes on top of that. So you don't have to leave this project. The investment is still valuable, only in another way. And of course, between this, realizing this, and this extreme scenario, there's all kind of different scenarios thinkable in which this concept is still usable. So stepwise development is also a way to encounter insecurity that we are facing. This is another example. I think you also have these neighborhoods. It's a pretty suburban housing area, also in the neighborhood close to Amsterdam. And this is built in the 70s. And it's at the moment the houses are getting bad. They're not that well isolated. Everything is paved for the car, and also the people living here understand that something should change. The only thing is that they don't agree with each other what should be changed. And here we also came up with a concept of with an experimental phase, you can say, in which you block one street or some streets and make it green. So you add more green to encourage biodiversity. You can also change one or some of the houses. There's all family houses, but at the moment they're not living families anymore, but only elderly people. The children are gone, and the elderly people stay living there, and that's one of the reasons why we have a housing crisis in the Netherlands, because these people don't need a house for a family anymore, but they're still living in a family house. So you can say, let's start changing some of these houses, and let's split them into maybe a house for elderly people and a starter. And as a third one, you can also say, well, at some spots we're gonna add apartment buildings for elderly people, so then people can stay in the neighborhood and family houses come free. And in that way, you can also change the neighborhood. And by having this experimental phase, you can, together with the people living there, you can evaluate how this was. Was this a good idea? And which of the three concepts works best? Or should we make a combination? And from there, you can go to a bigger scale and implement the change, the wanted change, with a certain sense of ownership. So here again, I think changing the existing urban tissue for the better is easier when you implement the factor time, when you implement incremental development. Well, to work like this, you need a bit different instruments than the classical instruments for city planning. And we all know city planning is not only done by spatial instruments, but we also need organizational instruments, legal instruments, and financial instruments. And for each of these four factors, we have 9 instruments in the book. So in total, we have 36 instruments that together help us to understand how stepwise development can work. And I'm going to show you 4 of these instruments, not all 36. This is an organizational instrument. It's so every page for these instruments is organized like this. It has a title. Empowering local communities is this one. It says why. This is a relevant instrument. It explains how it works. And there's always an example, a realized example, somewhere from Europe that tells how this instrument was used in reality in an urban context, and how that went. So this, for example, is an example from Greece, where they have a lot of refugees coming from Africa, and they are, when they get a legal status, they are really poor, and you want them to be part of your society. So this is about an institute that helps these people to empower these people to become part of the local community, and from there start helping improving their surroundings. This is a legal instrument. If you need new legal instruments, you need to experiment. And in Gothenburg in Sweden, they put in a purpose-specific free zone in a special area in the city, which is a legal zone where on a very specific topic there's some extra freedom compared to other areas in the city, so that you can experiment. And this experiment in Gothenburg was about the supply of energy. So if you have solar panels on your roof, or you have a windmill, then you become an energy supplier. And the law in Sweden doesn't allow an area to have more energy suppliers. So by changing this part of the law for this specific area, they could experiment about how to go on with diversity of suppliers for energy in a certain area. And well, they learned from it, and those lessons can be implemented on a bigger scale. So that's how you slowly, stepwise, can go to another legal regime. This is a financial tool, upgrading. If we have to produce less waste, we have to reuse more stuff. And it gets more interesting to reuse matter when you can upgrade it, when you can upgrade the value of it. So when you find something and by looking in a different way to that material can higher the value of it, it gets more attractive to reuse materials. So upcycling is a good way of encouraging reuse of materials. This is an example from I think Ljubljana, where there's exotic species, an exotic plant is taking over nature, and people take that plant, and it's a very strong plant. It's coming from Asia, and this wood is very strong, so you can make all kind of materials from it. And so if you have this stuff gathered, you have not only cleaned your nature, but you have also the base material to produce new all kind of new things, new stuff. So this is an example of upgrading. And the last instrument I'm going to show is a spatial instrument. Our recent history is characterized by modernity. By building in concrete, building in steel, the international style. Buildings all over the world look the same. But if you go a bit more back in history, you bump into all kind of local traditions where circularity of material is common ground. And also, if you go back to medieval ways of building, most of the time, these ways of building are a very good answer. They offer a very good answer to the local circumstances, to the local climate. So we can learn a lot from these traditional ways of building in terms of circularity and climate adaptation. The last chapter is full of examples of a flexible city. It's filled with realized examples of all over Europe from circularity and climate adaptation. This is a very nice example from Germany, where in a very traditional town in the 70s they built a concrete structure as an extension of their town hall. It was never really appreciated by the local people, and also the municipality got a bad reputation because of this building. And in the end, they decided to demolish it, but not only demolish it, but reuse the materials at the same spot. And they made something totally different out of it. Of course, this is a concrete structure, but it fits so much better to the existing environment. that I think this is a very inspiring example of the reuse of material. So, and the exciting thing, I think, as an architect, is that the reuse of material is not related to any style. You can make whatever you want still. What they did is they did not only crush the concrete and made new concrete facades and structures out of it, but they also did some kind of little color they added to the concrete material, so that the facades fit even better to their surroundings. So I think this is a very interesting way of circular use of materials. The last example I'm going to show is an example from Copenhagen in Denmark, where a big area of social housing was suffering from rainwater flooding, and by restructuring, reprofiling the public space, rainwater was led in a much better way, much more efficient way to the river, which is a bit further away. So, and if it starts raining now, these spaces are filled with water, and these islands here stay dry. So it's a very adventurous area when there's a lot of rainwater. And yeah, so it's this rainwater is brought to a quality. So it's not a problem anymore, but it's brought to a quality. And I think that's also very inspiring when it's about facing challenges about climate change. So, and here you see the project from above. The book is for sale at page 5, and I think it's also for sale at the bookshop here. And I'm asked if I want to sign the books for you. Of course, I'm going to do that. If you buy one, you get my signature and whatever you want me to write in it. I will stop my monologue now, and I'm really curious about your experience and your questions. So let's start that part of the lecture now. What I did is, so we can talk about your interesting questions, but it's also good to know that there are certain topics in the book, and I try to summarize some topics. So we can go to all these themes, and there will be some slides, and I mean, based on the pages of the book, we can have a talk about, for example, soil-sensitive building, stepwise investment, or circular building. So if you think one of these is having your interest, please let me know, and we'll go to that page and we can talk about it. So far. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, thank you.
Feel free to have a seat. Thank you. Thank you for a lecture. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you. We had a chance to talk to each other during the day, because we had, Tom was very generous, and he spent some time with us, with my colleagues from IPR, and we talked about in the context of Prague. So you know about Prague, you know about our problems, and even about some of our tools. So my question will be about what interested you? What was surprising, for example, about the Prague, and what is specific? What was the thing that you realized you maybe didn't see around Europe? Maybe you have it in the book. Maybe.
Yeah,
but,
no, let me
something
briefly,
that Prague is different.
Yeah, let me briefly reflect on that.
Cities.
I think there's a few things. So I think the challenge of making our cities circular and climate adaptive also counts for Prague. But now the question is, how are we going to do that in this specific context? And what I learned from you is that in Prague, like private property is a big thing. Whereas in Amsterdam, for example, the municipality owns the grounds. So it's much easier to put demands on the table for developments. So, but we all know we have to make our city more circular and climate adaptive. We should, otherwise I think we are lost. So now the question is, how do we seduce the owners, the stakeholders, the initiator, how do we seduce them or force them to make their developments circular and climate adaptive? And I think for that question, the book offers quite some interesting tools. And of course, it's always better to seduce people than to force them, because then it's an obligation and people start not liking it. So it's better to seduce them. I think that's the question. And then it also went about flexibility in the afternoon, and I think the flexibility is trying to find ways within the system to do things that are not so easy. So it's not so easy to make Prague climate adaptive and circular when you have these private landlords, when you have these private owners on those big development sites.
Yeah, you mentioned that in Amsterdam it works like that the land under the building is rent, and if you would like to develop a building, you have to rent it from the city, and it depends if it's a high-rise or if it's a low-rise building, etc. Is it easier in Amsterdam or in other cities to seduce developers to be part of the adaptation of the
Yeah,
city?
definitely. Well, what happens in Amsterdam, what happened the last few years, is that the prices for property and the rents that you can ask were growing and growing. So there was a lot of interest by developers and investors to invest in this city. And when so many people want to invest in your city, you can raise demands. You can raise your ambitions as a city, and that's what happened actually. And the project that I showed you, where we make a building as a park, that was a competition that we won, and it was, the ambitions were set by the municipality of Amsterdam. They said, we want a building that behaves like a park. Well, okay, that's what we're going to make, and we had to tick all kind of boxes, and we apparently ticked the most of the boxes, so we won this competition.
Yeah, I just want to mention that you were able to ask questions. So if you would like to raise your hand, you will get a microphone. And if you are shy, you can use Slido. Hashtag for tonight is flexible city. So if you would like to ask questions via Slido, you're allowed to. I also know that there are some of my colleagues, so welcome here in camp, and I would like to ask you also to ask questions, maybe more focused on problems of Prague in a meaning of professional way. So you'll be more than welcome. What is my another question is that you know that these people are fans of architecture, people who are interested in the future of the city, focus on problems. What would you recommend them? Where to start? Because it's like you mentioned that we know cities need to adapt to climate changes. Cities need some change, be less static and more active. Where should I start if I am interested in the future of my neighborhood and I would like to maybe help City Hall to do something? Where should I start? What should be the first move?
Yeah, well,
if I am holding your book in my hands.
There's many things. As a citizen, and you have a balcony or a garden, you can easily contribute to more biodiversity by making your garden greener, putting flowers on your balcony. I mean, those stupid little things, they all help. It really makes sense. And when there's bigger things that you see within your city or within your neighborhood, I think it's interesting to scale up, to get organized as citizens among each other, and define your goals or define the improvement that you see that you want. And try to get it organized. What I learned also in the afternoon is that Prague is a city that's in a way very well organized. In a very democratic way. So it's not really a top-down city, but even more, it's a bottom-up city, which is also a power. I mean, if good developments come from citizens, then as a city, I would say, you know for sure that it's owned, that it's accepted by the people itself. And things that are accepted, they stay alive. So I think that's also interesting about Prague.
Yeah. I have a question here. What is the best example of a circular town you have visited, or district, maybe?
Whoa. Well, if I go to circular, can I go to? Oh, well, how to go? Can I go to circular building? It's one of the slides. Yeah, this is this is interesting. Circular building. Yeah. So this is interesting. This was a temporary building at Design Week in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And of course, it's a showcase. And what these designers said, we're going to make a building for 2 weeks, and we only want to borrow stuff. We only want to borrow stuff, and we want to be able to give it back to the people after the festival. So what you see here is a structure of all kind of wooden pieces. The interior, so it's here, all kind of wooden pieces brought together by tie wraps. And somehow they managed to make whole beams out of it. And because it's tie wraps, you can easily take things, separate things later again. So it's really a demountable building. I think this is very inspiring. And what you see here is all the materials they gathered from building companies they knew in the neighborhood and whatever, and they said, well, yes, of course, we're going to build, but we have some wood left and we don't need it right away, so you can use it for your 2 weeks pavilion. So I think this is very interesting. And there's another one. I can go on. When it's about circular buildings, I mean, if you really want to professionalize that, there's talks in many cities in Europe about the material passport. So if you give a passport to all materials in your building, it's easy to find them back once your building is ready to be demolished. Because then you know the qualities, you know the size of it, you know the age of it. Because the problem of reusing materials is mostly that you don't know exactly what the quality of it is. And I mean, building is also about guarantees. If you have to build a building, you have to guarantee that it's windproof, waterproof, whatever. So we need to go to a building society or building culture where reuse is an important quality. And I think this this material passport principle can help us to get this organized in a better way, and also to make building materials better findable. Imagine you want to build a building out of reused materials. You have to know which building materials are available at what moment. Otherwise, it's very hard to execute this. So somehow we need to organize this and to get it out of the incidents and to make it into turn it into some common ground principle. So and another interesting, but then I have to go through all the slides once more. Sorry. Even kijken. That's a very interesting example from Denmark, again from Copenhagen. Let's go back. I just saw it. It should be somewhere here. It's this one, where they built a new building out of reused materials, and here we explain the story. In this area in Copenhagen, there was the brewery of Carlsberg, which is here, and it was made out of brick, and the joints between the brick, they were so strong that they couldn't get the bricks loose. So what they did is just make tiles of 1 by 1 meter out of this brick, and with these tiles they made this new building, which is a fascinating architecture, I think. I mean, this is the architecture of the future, and this is circular architecture. This is improvising. This is improvised architecture, and the wooden panels here, they come from a subway station. So it's full of reused materials, and there's on the roof there's a bridge coming from, I don't know, also from somewhere else, from one building to another. So you have a roofscape. So these things, when it's about circular building, I think these things are very inspiring. Yeah.
That reminds me one thing that you mentioned, and this was like this. If you have a circular architecture or this kind of stuff, it can be very unconventional. It looks very unusual, especially in Prague. It will be very unusual. And you mentioned something like you have in Amsterdam, something like a beauty commission or something like a commission for aesthetics of the buildings. And that's something we absolutely don't have in Prague. Actually, even if people are very interested in how buildings looks like, and they're really strict in the meaning that there is some glass house and they are really angry. It's another glass house. I don't like it. But we don't have anything like this. How it works? Because if you would like to build something from this material, there has to be someone who say, okay, that can stand in Amsterdam. That you can build this. How it works?
That's an interesting question. To me, it's like, I mean, I'm fed up with this practice. So in the Netherlands, we made our land ourselves out of the sea. So we have a long tradition of spatial planning. We were born as a country by making the land. So I think our way of planning, our way of city planning, used to be very sophisticated. And I think that's also why we had this beauty committee. So beauty committee is a committee of the municipality where colleague architects are part of. And once you want to build, you have to ask for building permit, of course. But you also have to pass this beauty committee, welstandscommissie, we call it. And you face your colleagues, and they say, "Okay, tell us, what did you do? Why did you do?" And well, you have to explain. You have to do a presentation, and then they always come up with suggestions how to improve or whatever. And of course, it's not only about beauty, but it's also about. I mean, there's always a paper and notes on forehand, and you have to read it, and you have to design a building that fits to it. No, so it's pretty well regulated. But now the problem when it comes to circularity is that you don't know exactly on forehand what you will find. We talk about, when it's about circular building, we talk about donor buildings. So there's a building that's going to be demolished that's a donor for a new building. But you don't know in advance, mostly you don't know exactly what comes out of this donor building. And you also don't know exactly how this pattern will be. So that's exactly the problem that our beauty committee has now. So how can they judge a building that is where improvisation plays a role? And last week we had such a conversation in Amsterdam also, and we invited the chairman of the beauty committee, and well, we tried to ask it to him, but of course he's a handy guy. He didn't really answer. But yeah, but that's a topic. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, please, question. I will ask for a microphone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to move on a little bit from built space towards animals and biodiversity. First of all, thank you for your impressive work, much needed work. I hope it becomes the bestseller in Czech Republic. Fingers crossed. I'd like to ask, especially in the light of the upcoming exhibition in Camp, which is going to deal with biodiversity in Prague, you're signaling some warning to us, the biodiversity decline. What exactly did you discover there? Can you expand on that?
Well, biodiversity decline is happening at a lot of places. So I don't know exactly how it is in Czech Republic. It might be better here because you have a lot of forest. It might be better here than in the Netherlands, where we have a lot of agriculture with poisoning farmers that put poison on the. But I think biodiversity decline should be a theme for all of us. And what I know is that once you have a robust, a strong network of green going through your city, animals can easily find each other and they can easily produce. And once you have only fragments left within your city tissue of green, species get isolated and there's extinction. So I think to get biodiversity, get it increased again, I think we should make sure within our cities that the networks of the green are strong, and mostly that's what I find interesting in Prague, because you have so clearly a policy on restoring your green structure. I mean, that's also implicitly is the thing going on in Amsterdam, but we don't put our finger on it, and we put our finger on other things. It's about rainwater and blah, blah, blah. So that's what I find so interesting in Prague. And I think that's something, I mean, the restoration of this green structure, that should be a policy in all our cities, to be honest. I think, yeah, that's how I see it. And of course, then again, you have to make sure that you don't get exotic plants and exotic animals in it. I mean, that's all other thing. But I think a good network, a good structure for your green is just as important as a good structure for your car. So they should, yeah, the city should be so clever that you have all networks well done.
Okay, thank you.
Is there an answer to your question?
Because, you know, we kind of pride ourselves from having quite a lot of greenery and doing great with green. That's why I was wondering, you know, why did you pick exactly this as a Prague challenge? Because there is this maybe more mainstream idea that the parks are there, we're doing good in this sense. So why is this alarming light for you that you picked for Prague? That's why I was wondering, because it goes counter to this more of a mainstream idea that, oh, we are taking care of biodiversity, actually we are great. So
yeah, so you're saying yeah. Well, I think because you're so aware of the green quality within your country, you have this policy. And it's not only that I take Prague as an example of biodiversity decline, but I also describe, I don't know if you have already read it, but it says in the text that there's a policy to restore or to improve biodiversity. And that's interesting, because I think that's inspiring for other cities. So it's framed maybe a bit in a way that you don't recognize it, but I think in the end, yeah, it's a positive. It's a very positive. It's brought as a very positive, inspiring policy strategy for other cities. Yeah. So, and there's another example from Prague. Well, another illustration from Prague, and it's also about green. So. And we have, one of our instruments is guerrilla gardening. I don't know if you know that principle, but it's, I mean, you can have all kind of policy about green in your city, but you can also say as citizens, well, you know, I see an empty spot, I'm gonna make a pocket park there. I'm just gonna put in flower bulbs or whatever. And also there, we took an example from Prague, from people, I think in Prague 3, that somehow started quite a while ago with yeah, kind of illegal actions. And what I learned is that it was taken over by the municipality already. So it's not illegal anymore. It's, I think you have a very good balance between top down and bottom up. So this is something that started bottom up, and it was immediately recognized by the top down institutes as something to embrace. So also there, I think from this example is also the awareness of green, the green eyes that you have as a country, as a culture, are pointed out there.
That's actually right. Prague citizens are very emotional about the greenery and about trees and everything. Especially every tree in the street is a park for us. Yeah. And when we have our surveys, every year we can see that the most frequented topics are parking, transportation, and greenery. Trees everywhere. That's our approach, and I think it's really cool, and we have to work with that. And Prague is actually on the first page of the book, which is very interesting. So thank you for that. Oh. Maybe people will know more about us. I have some questions here on Slido, but if you have questions in the audience, I will prefer it. because we had already some questions from Slido, but I can continue with them. The question about costs of circular cities. How about the cost of circular cities and climate adaptive interventions? I guess it's not the cheapest. And another question about the gentrification, which is sometimes connected to these changes. So what can you say about it, about the costs and about the gentrification?
Are these questions coming from the audience?
These questions are from the
Oh, wow. Yeah. I would like to go to stepwise investment, if that's a possibility. It's also somewhere in the presentation. This is about the cost of circular building, right? Yeah. So what you see here, this is about building forms related to costs, and related to time. So you can build for a day with a tent, and you can take it away, and it's very cheap. On the other hand, you can build a monument, and you have to invest a lot because you want to have materials that last for a very long period. You need structure that is capable of serving more programs. And so I think both building for a day and building for a century or for more centuries, they're both are pretty circular, pretty sustainable. Because if you don't need to live in a certain spot anymore, you take away your tent and the spot is empty again. And if you build a monument, you do it in such a way that you can maybe in future change the program, that the building materials are strong enough, are well appreciated. It's a beautiful building, and it's a building that is capable to change. The interior can change. The structure has a good size, the ceiling is the right height. But what we tend to do in our developing culture or in our habits, that's what developers always tell me. We build, especially in this column, we build for decades. In the spreadsheets, investors always want to earn back an investment in 30 or 40 years. And that's a very unsustainable period, to be honest. We should not do that anymore. Because it's too long to serve only one type of use. It's pretty hard to predict how a building is being used within 40 years. The world has changed, but it's too less to really invest in changeability, in flexibility. So these buildings, after 10 or 20 years, you're like, well, what should we do with it? Because we have another 20 years to go, but we cannot really change it. So I think, through circularity or flexibility or adaptability are here. Here we can change quickly to changing conditions, and here the building is capable of coping with changed conditions. So, is that a bit of an answer to the question?
Yeah, I guess so. And what about the gentrification, in the meaning that you have a neighborhood that actually works. There is a community, but it needs some sustainability. It needs some, the last touch to make it perfect, make it flexible, make it more adaptive. And there are some investments into the neighborhood, and this is something that is related to gentrification. When you invest in some location that was maybe okay before, people lived there, people were happy, but you sent some money there and you want those money back, maybe from a private sector. What do you think about it? Do you have experience with it, or is it something that you don't relate? Gentrification. You don't relate to this topic because it's specific and it has some other things to think about.
No, but it's a complex thing. It has a social dimension. Of course, you want to have a balance between attractivity in a certain neighborhood and, let's say, elements that are not specifically attractive. When it's too attractive, then a neighborhood is gentrified. and the other round is also not. So it's a balancing act that is. I mean, there's always a certain. It's a development. There's a certain moment where it's perfectly in balance, and then it goes on and it's out of balance again. And yeah, it's also. I believe you can do things as a government. You can change conditions and try to influence this process. But maybe, yeah, that's also how things go.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very complex problem, and it doesn't mean that gentrification has to be always wrong. It can bring some good to the neighborhood.
It can bring, sometimes it's needed to make a neighborhood more valuable, more popular. But once you've light up the fire, you never know. It might go to extreme.
Okay. Do you have another questions? Feel free to ask. Yes, 2 questions. So first 3 here in the 3rd row, 4th row. Thank you.
Hello. Nice presentation. Thank you very much. I'd like to refresh the question actually from the beginning. It doesn't come from me, but you kind of like nicely dodged it. And it was about the nice example of the not linear economic, which usually cities, how they work, but the best example, the city, you know, from the practice, which is doing actually circular economics, because I think it wasn't super clearly answered. So can you please answer on that?
Yeah, but once again, I have to understand the question really well. So a good example of the stepwise development, is that?
Literally about upcycling. Okay, I rephrase it a little bit, because back then I read the book from the Jonathan F. Rose, maybe you know it, about well-tempered city. And he's like theoretically elaborating a lot about the concept of actually like having the cities. Which like waste, like material waste from one, let's say, businesses is the income material for another ones, right? And the cities doesn't have the network of the information, kind of like, the store where we know that this is materials which are available and can be reused and so on. So if there is like some city which is systematically kind of like integrating this and kind of like exercising this in the best way, is there even any example like that?
Yeah, I think now I understand your question. So it's about the business behind the circular building. Yeah? And of course, I have everything in this presentation, but I don't know exactly where it is. There is one instrument. Yeah, it's this one here. This is the instrument I was looking for. So it's actually a very good question. So you have a donor building and you want to build something, and how do you find for your building the right donor building? That's actually your question, right? Or how do you know at the right moment who's wanting to buy your materials from your donor building? And that needs a kind of marketplace. And there's in several countries there's platforms started for that. Internet, you can offer your stuff on a specific site, and also you can have your questions on a specific site, and then you try to find the match. And to be honest, it appears to be pretty hard to find both the right materials that you need in the right quality, in the right amount, and to have it at the right moment. So it's a pretty hard assignment actually to match, and you have to be lucky a bit, I would say. And what we propose here by the reused materials mediator, we suggest here that, yeah, there is a market there's a business opportunity, because you can become a broker between offered materials and demanded materials. And I think this only works when it gets scaled up in the right way, because then there's a lot of offer, there's enough offer, and there's enough demand, and then you can make a business out of it. But yeah, it's pretty hard. What we did in the project that I showed you in the beginning is with the tiles coming from the 60s house flat and bringing it back. The good thing about that is that you know that the materials that come out, they fit again within the building. So building and structure are meant for each other, and bringing it back at in the same building is a fortunate match, of course, because you have exactly enough amount of tiles, and you know also that they fit. So yeah, it's a good question. There is examples. In Belgium, you have a rotor. So if you want to Google, you have a rotor. They're trying to be a reused material mediator. In the Netherlands, you have also a kind of party, I forgot the name, but they also try to do the same. But sometimes I listen to their stories and presentations, and I think they're still in the pilot phase. They're still in the they need to scale up still. So it's not yet proven. I don't know any example. In Berlin, you have a very nice shop in the city center where you can bring in your building material, but that's only for people that want to change their house a bit. So you can buy a door there, or you can buy a toilet. But it's not on a big scale. But I think that works. It's like a building market for private people changing their house a bit. I think that works, but it's not really a big scale.
There was another question. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I would like to ask a question about the public transport. I believe it's a big thing when building houses. When we are building houses that are like circular, as you said, or like functioning in a city. And I wanted to ask you how hardly is it taken into consideration when building new houses or like new neighborhood that should function in the city, and whether you are like asking that question, whether it is connected to the public transport, because I believe there is a potential in it to relieve like traffic there and to not have to build that many maybe places for cars or parking plots and stuff like that. So,
no, I totally agree with you. We should encourage public transport, and we should somehow get rid of all those cars. And I think densification of cities is a good answer actually to this topic. If you densify neighborhoods with good public transport, this public transport is better used, and you don't need to make new neighborhoods with new cars and roads and etc. So I think densification is an act of making a city more sustainable. And there's also, I mean, that's a bit inspired on the Corona time that we all still remember in the Netherlands, but I think also here people started to work from home, and immediately all the traffic jams were gone. And what I experienced is since then, it's much more accepted to work from home, maybe 2 or 3 days a week. And this also helps to reduce the dependency on car traffic. So there's actually more ways. Also, a way of living, of course, is by changing it in a clever way, our dependency on car traffic can be reduced. But I think densifying existing parts of the city is empowering or can empower our public transport.
Thank you. Another question here. Yeah, sorry, I will have to wait for a microphone for record. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. My question will belong to what you answered about the regulation, how we can fight against the city growing. So what is your experience with densify the city? Because I think it's a big problem. I'm not from Prague, I'm from Slovakia, but it's also a really big issue in Slovakia nowadays because it's really hard to build or densify the existing city structures because of the light regulation and etc. etc. And the easier way is to go to build this suburb, of course, for the developers. So maybe I read a lot about this, also about the green belt. It can be also the answer for it. It can somehow regulate the city and just to build inside, also combined with the other green structures, not only the green belt, but the complex structure. So that will be my question, what you think about it and how it's working in Amsterdam, for example.
So your question is, how can we densify the city? Because
yeah,
it
what
looks
can
rather-
be your tools for densify the city?
Yeah, that's a good question, because one of the characteristics of the existing city is that there's already many stakeholders, and those many stakeholders, they don't want things to change. And when you come in with new people, you get in conflict, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And these people say, well, go and build somewhere else, and that's. We are having a building crisis in the Netherlands at this moment, and this is one of the reasons, because there's no real free grounds anymore to extend cities. But we still need a lot of building. We still need a lot of new buildings, and I think the answer is to densify existing urban tissues. And of course, you get lost in all kind of procedures, and so that's where it stops. There's also one of the instruments in our book is densification, because we really believe it's a good thing it's a good answer for many challenges. What is an interesting way of densifying existing cities is most buildings can have one more story. If you add one more story, the structure can have it, and you can earn a bit more money as an owner of that building, and with that bit more money, you can make your building more sustainable. You can invest it in more insulation, blah 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 blah. So that's a way of densifying the city, which has an incentive for the owner and also maybe for other people living there, because their house might become cheaper or better insulated or whatever. Yeah.
I think it's already worked. Maybe we have a lot of parts where these panel dwellings and modern buildings will be really nice when we can densify the city, but I don't know, we really don't know how.
Sorry, so you're saying this is something you already know? So
no, I think this is what already going on.
Yeah.
But maybe, but you also already talking about the ownership of the land. Maybe this is our problem. Maybe we need to somehow regulate this, and or maybe the city can buy more land, and after we can start to densify, and also the law with lighting regulate. I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah,
what
well,
you think
there's
about.
of course. I mean, many cities struggle with this theme. What I showed in Amsterdam, there's somehow it's to me it's pretty unexpected, but there's the use of cars is decreasing. So we use less and less cars. There's many parking garages that are just empty. They had to build it a while ago, but now it's empty. So, and those are chances for new buildings. You should not build in parks, for example, because you need parks in a city. So some places should stay open. And when you need less cars, maybe you can also take out some roads, or make those roads smaller. And that's also, again, that's possibilities for densifying. Or in a clever way, I mean, all those Siam, those modernist areas, I think you have a lot of them in Slovakia and also in Czechia. There is plenty of space for towers, buildings with a small footprint. But you need to When it's owned by big housing corporations, it might be easy. But when it's privately owned, then you have to have a lot of talking with all those owners to convince them that this is a good way. And it would be good to somehow also share the benefits from the densification with these people. Because of tailor shopping, I mean, bol.com and all these kind of things, this buying stuff on the internet, shops are having hard times. But if you increase the amount of houses, there's more clients, more possible clients for shops. And those things are interesting also for people that already live there now. So there is arguments to densify cities and with benefits for the people that are already there. And I think based on a specific assignment, you need to formulate the right, you have to seduce the people in the right way. And but I agree with you. I mean, it's an easy thought, but it's a complex thing to realize.
Thank you.
Okay, the last question, Paul? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just, to have this overview, I'd like to maybe open up this question of social inclusivity and how to, let's say, maintain our cities to be socially inclusive, how to actually empower that. So can you venture into this area as well, to give us maybe your list of instruments?
Yeah, that would be nice. It's somewhere at the beginning of the...
Thank you.
Yeah. This is the social inclusion. It's a beautiful story. Listen, we go to Sarajevo, and there was a terrible war in Sarajevo, and after that war affected the whole region. There were many refugees coming to the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and what you see here, I'm gonna try and show you. These areas, you see them here on a bigger scale. These encircled areas, you should not build there because the hills are too steep, and when it rains, those hills are unstable. They become unstable. But so for centuries, the city developed itself without touching those areas. But when these refugees came to the city, this is where they built their houses illegally, because that's where the places were. And they quite quickly, those new people in the city, they got in trouble because their houses got unstable. And well, what the municipality of Sarajevo, they developed a program to help all these people to stabilize their houses, to make sewage so that the water could easily go away. And so they said to those people, though you came here as a refugee, you're part of our city. So we're going to help you, and we make you part of the city. So I think it's a very nice story about both climate change and refugees. And this project is doing pretty well, actually. They're pretty far with stabilizing all those illegal houses. And when it's about inclusivity, we should, to stay stable as a society, we should also really take care of the people, of the poor people, let's say. This is also an interesting instrument. It's law change motivation. So we need to reconsider laws, because to encourage or to predict climate adaptation or circularity. And it works best when you explain them, when you have a program to explain people why it's so important that they change their lives, why it's so important that they take out all the tiles of that garden and to put in plants instead, and why it's so important to invest in insulating their houses. So this is also a way, if you have a good program where you motivate your law changes as a government. They have in Luxembourg, this is a very interesting example from Luxembourg, where they have an institute where they try to help people understanding the law change they make. If you do it in a good way, I think it will be more successful. And another instrument we define is a financial instrument. Some people don't have the money to make this change, but they have. I'm thinking about refugees once more. But they have they are capable of contributing in a certain way by just helping making gardens or by their knowledge they have. So you can also think about ways of making, getting them involved by paying with their skills. So this is an example, once again, from Greece, I think, from Athens. Once again, it's a refugee-based example. And if we go on this, I think I already explained. So here, you only can be successful, you can only avoid conflicts by making those steps together with the people. And this is also a very interesting example from Ghent. In Belgium, they have a lot of privately owned houses, and most of them, but there's many of them are in a very poor state. And once the people have bought it, I mean, you cannot. Oh, sorry. You cannot sell such a place, and there's a lot of shame also between people because there are, and social isolation because they live in such houses and they made a mess out of it, or they wanted to renovate it but they didn't have the money anymore. So the municipality of Ghent was aware of this problem and they came up with what they call a rollend fonds, revolving fund. So with a small amount of money in a fund, they invested in those buildings, and once it was done, they took out the money and they went to the next one, and in that way it's a social program. But it really helped people to restore their house, to improve their house. So I think it's an interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for your lecture. It was amazing. Thank you, Tom Bergevoet. So, if you are interested in this topic, you will find the record on our YouTube. And next month, I guess, we start with another season of Rethink Architecture, which is focused on sustainability and adaptation. So please follow us on social media and visit us next time. Thank you very much.